everyone. So I thought that we would take some time to introduce ourselves and talk about how we came to have this property and how we came to come to the idea of homesteading and all that type of thing. And so I am Angela. Hi.
And I'm Brian, her husband.
And we have Julia, who will have a separate video because she's working today, and Mason James, who is 2 years old and is thankfully napping so we can make this video. And the four of us will be going to Virginia. But other than that, we have a really large family, and people think we're actually kind of crazy, but we have older children who are all out of the house, and we have total of, is it four sons? The four older, Andrew, who is going to be 25. We have Devin, who is 22. We have Nick, who is 21. We have Zachary, who will be 20 very soon, and he is in the Navy. And then we have Julia, who is 18, and then twins, Sydney and Rachel, who are going to be 17. And we have a really large dog named Hank, who you've already seen in some of the videos, also known as Bonks. He's called Bonks more often than he's called Hank, right? Yeah. And then I have a horse named Max, and Julia has a horse named Faith, and you'll see those too. Anything else you want to say?
No, I think you pretty much said it all.
Okay. A lot of people ask us, how did we end up even buying this property, finding this property? Like, what was the impetus to do it? And we had so many kids, and the house that we live in now, that we're getting ready to sell, is kind of on the small side. And we only had 3 bedrooms upstairs, and we decided to turn the basement into kind of like a master suite, but still it was kind of tight with all of those kids. And so Brian and I started looking for bigger homes in the town where we live to keep the kids in the same schools. And
Enormous house, postage stamp yard.
yeah, and they were really expensive, and the taxes were a lot higher. And we're like, I don't know, and like right next to your neighbors.
Right on top of your neighbors.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening is our friends Eric and Callie were talking about buying property. And so one night we're like, maybe that's what we do. Maybe we look at property.
A getaway place.
Yeah, like a place to get away.
Maybe 1 or 2 acres.
That's what we thought. Like, that's how it started.
1 or 2 acres in Tennessee. I think that was.
Well, we made like a
thought.
circle of like 9-ish hours away. And so we looked on, I had an iPad at the time, and so we made like a circle and we looked for property. And then we saw like, wow, it's actually not as expensive as we thought. And so like the acreage started going up and up.
2 became 5, 5 became 20. I think we even decided to up the search to, well, let's see what 20 acres looks like.
Yeah, and so that's how it ended up working out, is that we realized that we could afford to purchase property, like a large amount of property, because it was not very expensive down south. Not, of course, by Pigeon Forge or by Gatlinburg, because it is expensive there. So that's how it all started, is that we found properties. We couldn't believe how inexpensive they were. And we're like, let's just go look. And so it was like April, wasn't it April? March. It was March, because the kids were on spring break. So it was March of 2014. We found properties that were within like, I don't know, half an hour-ish of each other, like 5 properties in Virginia and Tennessee, like really close together in that far southwestern bit of Virginia. We booked a hotel room in Cumberland Gap.
Yeah.
That was so cool. And so what ended up happening is one of the Virginia properties was sold like the day or two before we got there. And the Virginia property we bought was the first one we actually saw. And then the next day we saw a bunch in Tennessee with like driveways that were like this. Yeah, that's just not happening. Not with me. I hate steep roads. So we ended up, the pictures didn't do the property justice at all. Like, at all. I'm so glad the listing agent didn't do the best job with pictures.
I think there were 3 pictures to describe 65 acres.
Yeah. So that's how we ended up with it. So once we got the property in Virginia, we realized it was an immense amount of work to get the house where we wanted it to be. Like, we were gonna knock it down.
Yeah, our first thoughts were we're just going to level the house, and I think we even looked at like a double wide trailer.
Yeah. Once we got it, there was kind of like a fire ignited a little bit inside the both of us. And for me, I've always wanted to grow my own food. Like, it was always something I wanted to do, but I was so afraid because I had no idea. Nobody ever taught me how to do it, but it was always like in me, like, I want a garden, I want a garden, I want a garden. So in 2015, the year after I started my very first garden, it was it was not a good, no. I harvested mistakes more than I harvested food. It's just
Not mistakes. It was you harvested a better way of doing it for the next year.
Yeah, so each year I got better and each year the garden got bigger. And I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I joined a bunch of Facebook groups, Facebook gardening groups. They were so helpful teaching me the things that I need to be doing. And all this time Brian also was feeling, how were you feeling? I'm not going to say how you felt.
That's an understatement. I love the seclusion of the mountains and getting away from the Midwest. This is the complete opposite of our initial direction, which was, hey, get this enormous house with your neighbors living right on top of you, to I got 65 acres and I can pee off my front porch and nobody will bother me.
That is true. I don't think he's ever peed off the front porch. I truly hope not. I think you peed off the side porch, though.
I'll never tell.
Anyway, it kind of ignited a desire to be more self-sufficient and give my family healthier food, learn how to can. Like, all of this happened in 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, 19. And then I think, got really good at it. And so all while this was happening, he and I were talking about what's the next step for us. And that's when we really were like, we really want to be able to sustain ourselves.
There came a point in owning this property where there were 2 phases in our life. The first phase was we were at the property, and the second phase was if we weren't at the property, we were planning about what we were going to do the next time we were at the property.
Yeah. And
it's all consuming.
Yeah, so Virginia kind of consumed everything. And so that made us think we want to make our own farm and our own homestead, get as much off the grid as possible, which we'll talk about shortly, and get out of the Midwest.
We are.
So in terms of being prepared to be homesteaders and have a homestead, here's what we can do. Okay, I can garden like nobody's business. I know how to can. I know how to preserve food in other ways. I know how to make home remedies. I'm pretty good at recognizing plants and things like that. Not at all good about trees and mushrooms and stuff, but I'm going to learn how to do that. I think I'm good at, like, Mason, for example, will probably be homeschooled, and because I am an educator, by the way, I work in higher education, and I've been a teacher pretty much all of my life, And so I'm kind of prepared in that way. I have very little fear when it comes to trying new things, taking chances, taking risks, animals. And Brian, like, how are you prepared?
I thought you were calling me an animal.
You are, you are your very own animal, Brian. Anyway.
I I don't think I can truly say that I am prepared. Um, I've never been, shy of, hard work, and it's a different type of work than what I do now. I've been a mechanical engineer for more than 30 years. So rather than sitting on my butt and using my head, and not this kind of using my head either.
That's his scar. You probably have seen that video, but
Um, I'm I'm very familiar with hard work. I grew up in the country. I've had rudimentary gardening and livestocks, experience, chickens and those type of animals. And
you can
this
fix
is
almost anything too.
I,
Fix and
I
build.
things like that just come second nature to me. I can adapt and learn what I need to know very quickly.
In terms of not prepared, we really don't have the equipment we need. We don't have a tractor. We need a tractor. We'll have to see, how finances play out in terms of Brian's job, because at this point we don't know if Brian is going to be able to keep his job or not. It's likely he isn't. Uh, I get to keep my job, which is wonderful that we have that. But in terms of like, so that is we don't know what's going to happen with his job. And the equipment part, I've never raised a chicken. I don't know. I'm trying to learn. I'm reading books. I'm watching videos. I'm taking notes and trying to figure out chicken breeds and all that kind of stuff. We may or may not get cattle. We were talking about maybe bison because that's, people aren't doing that down there. And so I have a friend from high school who just got her first bison herd. And so I'm going to tap into her. But unprepared also for things that we should know by our age, but we didn't grow up in the South and we didn't learn, like Brian's head. George told him like these lessons are things that they learned as teenagers, right, from papas and daddies and stuff like that, teaching them what not to do. Snakes. It's also something that I'm just not used to having to worry about. What else?
We're 180 degrees from what we started off with. Going from the professional work to a homestead lifestyle is 180 degrees.
Yeah.
So I think what we do bring is we have the wherewithal and the knowledge that in a lot of ways can be applied and adapted to what we'll do on the homestead. Like you said earlier, I can fix pretty much anything.
I think we have what it takes to be successful, but there's going to be learning curves that happen, and we'll probably be sharing all of them with you on this channel, which ought to be interesting. I can't wait to get my first egg.
I think the one aspect that is different is, for me anyway, I don't look at any of this as work. I'm excited and enthusiastic about doing this, and my heart's in it. My heart my heart belongs to Virginia. Yeah, I know that.
That's corny, but true.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. A few years after we bought the 65-acre property, we spoke to the owner of the 40 acres that adjoined us to the east. We knew this family since before we actually bought the 65-acre property because they had owned it since the 1940s. And his parents moved into the really old log cabin that is in the woods on the 65, and that's where they lived. And then he built the house that we are currently, using for his parents, and they moved up into that house.
1972.
Wow, it's impressive. Good job. I didn't remember that. I knew it was the 70s, but anyway, we talked to him and we ended up purchasing we call it the East 40. You'll see that referenced all the time in these videos. But it was such a gorgeous property. Like just had to have it. And that's when like our ideas of really creating a homestead they were solidified. It's like, yeah, we're definitely going to do this. And if Brian had his way, he would buy every freaking property. But it's like, we have limited funds, dude. I wish we didn't. It would be awesome to be able to get more property, but
Literally, I could buy another 250 acres and I would be content then.
yeah, you need to be content now because, we are blessed.
Absolute seclusion.
Anyway, so going off grid is something that Brian has been talking about for many, many years, and it's important to me to be as self-sufficient. It's important to both of us to be as self-sufficient as possible, which means not relying on public utilities and things like that. The one caveat is I will have to have internet to be able to do my job. And so we cannot be completely off grid or until I can just quit my job, which I don't know. I don't think that's going to be able to happen anytime soon. One of the ways that we had talked about doing that is harnessing what is already there, because we talked about solar, right?
Hydroelectric is probably the most efficient renewable energy source that we have, given that the 40 acres has a medium capacity, high waterfall, maybe 150 feet or more in height, and that runs 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's not drastically affected by the seasons. So
Mm-mm.
it's a constant source. It's
Mm-hmm.
It'll prove to be more efficient than wind or solar, which, solar, for example, you get 8 hours of sun and then you're running battery. The
Yeah.
hydroelectric is going to always be rejuvenating the battery system.
Yeah, so we're exploring ways to create hydroelectric. The gentleman who we're working with to build our new house, he really enjoys that kind of stuff as well and is quite knowledgeable. So we look forward to maybe in the next couple of years being able to actually support ourselves with energy. The water is obviously already on our property. We will not have to use public utilities for that. We'll use our water to feed our animals, to water my gardens, and Brian can, build pumps that just pump it out for me. We want to use like a drip system in the garden's going to be huge, and use a drip system to make it efficient, and so
We have natural springs
everywhere.
everywhere. You almost cannot throw a stone without bouncing across a wet spring.
Yeah, like on the 65-acre side, we're talking about keeping the horses over there. And like there's this one spring right by our fire pit. The fire pit's really cool, by the way. Thanks to Devin and Noah for helping build that, and George and Brian. And anyway, that was years ago. Tapping into that spring to be able to just take water to the horses. There's also another spring closer to the barn. So when we have pigs, which I hope we get pigs, we will be able to get the pigs water as well and do it in a very efficient way without a whole lot of work. So overall, we're talking about having chickens, meat chickens and egg chickens. We're talking about having pigs for meat and maybe probably cattle. I don't know. We're still talking about cattle versus bison for meat and to sell so that we could actually sell our meat, the chicken, the eggs, and the pork, and do it all in a very natural way so that the animals are not fed like genetically modified anything. It's as close to nature as possible for our meat. Anything you want to add?
No, that pretty much covered it.
All right. At this time, we have unofficially listed our house for sale. The market right now is really, really hot in this neighborhood, in this town where we live, outside of Chicago, and we'll see what happens, with the sale of the house. The plan is to take the profit from the sale of this house and use it to build our new house. And so that's like really up in the air. It's like, oh, how much is that going to be? I have no idea how much that's going to be. We've been working really hard the last year or two trying to pay off as much debt as possible so that whatever happens with Brian's job, he may have to take a job down there, which I'm pretty sure you're not very excited about because it's going to pay a lot less than what we would be paid, living up here, working in Illinois, which is where we both work. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
true. Uh, so maybe sometime this summer, we will be doing our, full move down there. We have a lot of stuff in storage in Virginia, and because our house is pretty small. So we were complaining about this house being small. That house is like a quarter,
It's a cottage.
a third of the size of this one. So that's going to be an adjustment for sure. But, we're looking forward to it. And in this channel, you're going to, if you've watched this long, this channel, we're going to show you what happens. Like when we move, we have so many things to do. We have a sawmill shed to build in May, figuring out where to put horses and, the barn on the 65.
Our successes, our failures, our trips to the ER room.
I hope there, I should say that I hope there's not going to be any more, but if any of you know Brian, there will be more trips
I have
to the
given
ER.
my blood for this homestead, and I will likely do it again.
Yeah, so keep watching. I will post videos as often as we possibly can. There will definitely be more homestead focused videos once we get there full time, and we try to get stuff established there. But stick with us, and hopefully you'll learn something. And if you have suggestions, when we make videos, feel free to make helpful suggestions because we will be learning. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.